bikes, that's what it is. It's everything. It's my living, it's my world. It's the first thing I think about when I get up in the morning. It's the last thing I think about when I go to bed at night. I walk into work and I'm the most blessed individual in the world. I get to fix motorcycles for a living. That's amazing, isn't it? For me, I don't want to do anything else. Quiet on set, please. Thank you. Can't believe I said that. I'm sorry.
Stealing my line.
No. Thanks for coming. You've come a long, long way to come and get your bike sorted there. That's really cool. Thanks, dude. I really appreciate it. And your bike is kick-ass.
I've got that on film as well.
Yeah, you've got it. That's it. There's evidence of it, man. That's cool.
We'll kick off right at the beginning, shall we? What was your earliest motorbike-related memory?
Basically, my dad was a motorcycle policeman in Birmingham city centre. So when I was probably 11 years old, I think it was, maybe a little bit younger, my dad came home on his police bike. Okay, so this, you imagine I was a wee boy, and basically he was a big, tall, 6'1" guy who came home on this police bike, which was just massive. And he came home on it, and I saw him standing sort of next to his bike, and I sort of stood there looking up at this bike. And then it started up, and the noise and the smell, and obviously he's my dad. He's kind of, you know, like I look up to my dad. He's quite a guy, and basically when it kind of, he turned up on this bike, like it was just awe. It was just absolutely like just broke my world in half because it was massive. He's always ridden bikes. They've always ridden bikes. All my family have ridden bikes. Like my granddad have always ridden bikes, that kind of stuff. And even my mum had a bike at one point as well. But when Dad turned up on this police bike, I think it was 1985. So I'd have been about 11 years old, something like that. When he turned up on that, it was just like, what is that? This is amazing. So that was the first memory of a motorcycle, or that's when it all kind of kicked off, if I'm honest with you. I wasn't allowed a bike because Dad was a policeman. He knew full well that if I got a motorcycle in the garage, I would not behave myself on it, and he was not going to have me sort of turning into an horrible little urchin. So what happened was, rather than me smashing up push bikes and to his toolkits, because basically what I used to do was fix things and try and fix things badly, because obviously I had no mechanical understanding or sympathy or anything along those lines in those days. So my first bike was a CG125, a 1981 CG125 that my cousin sold me. It was in pieces when I got it. My dad let me save up my money from a paper round. This is just starting to sound a bit weird, but I saved up all of my money and I paid my cousin Alan £80 for a CG125 that was in pieces that he'd stripped. It was the bike that he learned to ride on. It got over. They got it. I don't know how it got over to my house, but the engine was in pieces, the bike was in pieces, and basically that was the bike that I started to put back together again, rather than just sort of breaking lawnmowers. So once I kind of got that together, my old man kind of bought lawnmowers home from the guys at work, and I fixed the lawnmowers for him when I was still at school, that kind of stuff. But the first bike I ever had was a CG125. It's my cousin Alan's. It was in 1,000 pieces. The cylinder head was dead. So I took it to school, and because my dad hasn't got any kind of mechanical understanding. He's good, but he ain't nowhere near good enough to kind of understand engine knowledge or anything like that. So I took it to school to see my teacher, Mr. Jones, who I still see every now and again, even after all these years. He's an old man now, but I asked my teacher, Mr. Jones, I said, is this cylinder head any good? And he said to me, come back at break time and I'll show you. In fact, he didn't. He said, come back at break time tomorrow and I'll bring a valve spring compressor in. And he bought a valve spring compressor in the next day. So I went down to his office at break, next day, first break, about 10:30, and he took the valves out and showed me how to lap valves in. The guy's a legend, an absolute legend. In fact, I even wrote a story about him when I was writing for a magazine, and framed it and gave it to him afterwards, just to sort of say, look, you actually did inspire one one child. If nothing else, you inspired me, sir, and that was it. Thank you very much. But it was a CG125 that I ended up rebuilding, and after that, I can't help myself. AP Workshop started out as a company called Aprilia Performance, and basically what happened was I used to work for Aprilia UK. I was the technical manager at Aprilia UK, bought out Aprilia, and I think that was about 2007 and 2008, I can't quite remember. It's all been a bit of a blur since then. But I left working for those because I wasn't going to work for Piaggio. I don't like the way they do business. Aprilia in Italy, when a guy called Ivano Beggio owned the company, was a company where Ivano Beggio knew your name. He was a very stern Italian guy, but he knew who I was, and if he needed something, he would ask for me directly. He couldn't speak English, and my Italian was rough, but basically he would ask for you directly. And he would ask for you, and he'd get one of his guys to come and talk to you who could speak English and sort of say, or translate from him and say, Griff, can you do this? Whereas at Piaggio, it's a completely different ball game. They're the fourth biggest motorcycle manufacturer in the world. They're massive. They're absolutely huge. And you're a number. And I don't do that. I can't work like that. So basically, motorcycles are all about it's very personal. You bring your bike in here, and that's your life. You spend your money, your hard-earned money, like doing that. So it didn't fit well. So basically, I left, started up Aprilia Performance. I started up servicing, looking after, building Aprilia product, pretty much the V-twin product, because there was no V4 at that particular point in time. The V-twin product, looking after those bikes, because the dealer network at that particular point in time, because of the fact that Aprilia didn't put the money into the dealer network, it was pretty poor, and I knew full well I could do that. I could smash it. The only thing I've had to learn how to do basically is how to run a company, because being a mechanic and running a company is a completely different ball game, completely different. But I've tried, I'll get there, and I'm still here something like, I think, was it about 15, 16, 17 years later, something like that? I can't add up, but I'm still here doing it, just by bloody mindedness, I think, more than anything else. But we're here, and we're still doing it. It's the industry that's changed massively. The industry's changed because the customer demographics changed. And having been in the industry for that long, you can see that the type of people who are riding bikes have changed. Therefore, the people who own those bikes can afford to buy a bigger bike. It's very, very rare that you see guys, kids like I was, riding peds on the road or scooters on the road, or like little 125s. It's quite rare to see those guys these days. Whereas when I was sort of 16, you got a 50 and you was out on the road, and that was your freedom, and you was like, just didn't get seen for days on end, because it took you 2 weeks to get to North Wales rather than sort of a couple of hours, which is what it would do on 1100. But the industry's changed quite dramatically, just because people can't afford to ride bikes. They're a luxury these days. There was a time in the 60s, if you look back on YouTube and see these things, where bikes were a major form of transport, but it's not like that anymore. So motorcycle industry is now part of the leisure industry, I think, to be honest with you. And that's quite a dramatic change, because people's attitudes to their motorcycles change. Therefore, the industry's got to change to compensate for that. So it's a pretty big change. Having been around, I can't admit that I'm an old timer, but I kind of am, I suppose, if you think about it that way. It's really weird, but it's absolutely true. But basically, it's changed so dramatically. But the Aprilia crowd are a proper good bunch, because they're they're kind of the underdog, I suppose. Everybody loves a Ducati, everybody knows a Ducati and stuff like that. But the fact is that the Aprilia crowd are kind of, they're really into their bikes, and I really like that about the guys, because if you kind of pull them over to the bench when you're working on the bikes and say, this is what's going on with your bike, and this is why it's going on with your bike, it's just, you can see the kind of the enthusiasm in people, and it's infectious, and it's just amazing. So it's changed quite dramatically, man, as it goes. I don't know where it's going to go from here, if I'm honest with you. I don't know, but you know what? It's quite a strange place to be at the moment, but I wouldn't do anything else. So if you remember me talking to you about my first job, Diamond Motorcycles, 1988, I started at Diamond Motorcycles in Nuneaton. On the way I got to work one day, and Richard was late, and Dean was there, and Richard was late, and Dean was saying, this was before mobile phones, and Dean was saying, I wonder where Richard is, or Dick, we used to call him Dick at that point. I wonder where Dick is. And I said, it's not like him to be late, because he was normally pretty much on time. But it turns out he'd stopped to help somebody because he saw a guy broke down on the side of the road. And that's what it's about. If you ride a bike, if you're a motorcyclist or a biker or whatever you want to call yourself, you look after each other. You have to, because we're a minority. If you get stuck, nobody else is going to stop. You've got to stop. You've got to stop and help. That's carried on in this company. So yeah, the YouTube videos can be counterintuitive from a marketing perspective, but if you look at it, it means that the people who are watching these YouTube videos know that you know what you're talking about, because you've got proof. Plus the fact it helps people. If you wanted to find out the information that I've put on those videos, you could go and watch 1,000 other people's videos that are doing exactly the same thing, but they're doing it on a different model, or they do it in a different way, or they do something differently, or you could read a workshop manual. There are certain jobs that I will not film on a YouTube channel because they're just too involved, too in-depth, or it's too easy to go wrong. But bleeding a back brake, for example, on an RSV or a Tuono, with the underslung caliper, that kind of thing, or what's called a drop-in caliper. If you have a look at that video, it was filmed, I think, in 2011, something like. It looks like it was filmed on potato, for Christ's sake. It was terrible. But it's still relevant to this day. And the amount of people that have got bikes that are stuck in the far reaches of Scotland, or back down in Cornwall, or even, like, we've had contact from people in Russia, French Polynesia, Germany, all across Europe, America, Australia, New Zealand. People come from all over the world and contact us and ask about help and stuff like that, because they've got no help. With that in mind, if these videos do help, then that's what it's about. Not only does it advertise the company, but it also perpetuates that whole, we've got to look after each other, man, because we ride bikes and that's how it works. So it was beaten into me from a very early age. Richard wasn't given any kind of telling off. Dick, as it was then, sorry, wasn't given any kind of telling off. Dean was actually quite complimentary about the fact that he stopped. Dean, the boss, was like, no, man, you did the right thing. That's it, and that's how it should be. And it means a lot to me to actually be able to help people. It's not about money. Because if it was about money, I wouldn't be doing this, because I don't make lots of money. It's not about money. It's about doing what you want to do and looking after the whole scenario and being a part of it. So it's like I said, that's why I don't mind. So, same place, Diamond Motorcycles. Richard was going to race a 250LC. I was at that place for a year. He was going to race a 250LC in production racing. Basically, what happened was that bike, we built that bike a couple of times, and he never actually went racing until the year after I left that company, and I went to work for another company where they were doing racing, club racing. And club racing, we was racing a KR1S and a ZZR 600 because this was a Kawasaki dealership. And what happened was, I was keen. I was really keen. And the other guys that worked at the shop were genius. There was Nigel, who I still see these days. Absolute, really, really clever guy. Really abused apprentices so bad. Bastard. I still get him, but we're still friends over that. And there was another guy called Mick Wood who's just a miserable guy, a hateful guy, but super clever, super good. Knew exactly what he was doing. Got a super, mega portfolio racing history. So racing was all part of it. So I ended up building this K1S, and Mick ended up building this ZR600. That, I think, was about 92, I think, something along those lines. That was the first bike that we got. I think we won the EMRA Championship in that particular year. So that was the first bike that I ever built that won a championship. I quickly realised, I went racing for a bit after that, and quickly realised I was actually better at fixing them than was at riding them. Because in order for you to go racing, you've got to have a lot of money. I ain't got a lot of money. I've never had a lot of money. I've come from humble backgrounds, you know what I mean? I never went without, but there was no opulence in my life. So I quickly realised that despite the fact my mum and dad helped me as much as I can, I probably wasn't ever going to be really good, just because I was fast, but I never had tyres. I used to steal fuel to go racing, or I used to borrow tyres, or just use people's cast-offs and turn them round to go, so I could use the other side of the tyres, that kind of stuff when I went racing. But like I said, quickly realised I was actually better at fixing them. So we've won a couple of other championships since then. I think we've got another 3 championships on top of that when we've been on and off racing as it goes throughout my career anyway. So my racing career, actually, as in riding, is not that good, I'm afraid. There was no trophies on my cupboards for that one, but there was trophies on the cupboards from building bikes, that's for sure. Definitely, we've built a couple of fast bikes. That's it, no question.
And you now do a bit of pit bike racing as well?
Yeah, we did British Championship in 2017 on the pit bikes with my mate Pesky, and that was a load of fun. He's just a bad influence because Pesky is actually a good racer. He is actually a really good racer. Like he's really good. So he beat me soundly, and again it kind of reminded me that I'm actually better at fixing them than I am riding them as it goes. But yeah, we did a bit of pit bike racing. That was really good. We kind of tend to do just some track day stuff now and just enjoy ourselves. I'm kind of in my mid-50s now, so kind of like I don't bounce quite so well, and I'm a little bit scared of crashing. But it's all just take it down a notch or two and enjoy yourself instead. What I've got now, man, what I've worked for, and what these guys that have worked with me have got, and what we've achieved these days is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, this isn't just me that does this. Like I said, the guys that I work with here, what we've achieved here is mind-blowing. You got to remember, man, I was a snot-faced 14-year-old. In fact, I was 11, 12 years old, snot-faced 11, 12-year-old looking at my dad's police bike and thinking, what is that? To the point where now I've got like a group of people that I work with that have achieved this. This is it. This is the highlight. There's loads of good high moments. I was, like I said, I worked for Honda UK as a technical training instructor. I've worked for Aprilia as a technical manager. I lived in Italy. I worked at the factory. I helped develop products at the factory, that kind of stuff. That's amazing. That's just like, I couldn't get my head around that, couldn't fathom that kind of thing. We've won championships. I've ran teams, that kind of stuff. Winning like the Superstock 600 championship with Nick Nick Anderson on that R6. We ran an R6 because it was the bike to run. Winning that championship with the people involved in that was just amazing. It was like a massive high. But what we've achieved these days, and I say we because, like I said, it's not me. I've not achieved this. I don't do this by myself. I can't do this by myself. What me and the guys have achieved at this particular point in time is just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. So what we've got here, we've got an RS660, the new RS660. We've got what's called the Heritage Series. It was an idea put together by not even me, to be honest with you. This was Ross and Amber's idea. In fact, I think Amber put together the artistic side of things, and I think it was Ross that did come up with the idea of the Heritage Series. I think that was it. And I reckon still to this day, the factory have watched what we're doing, and they did it last year. I know it. But basically, we've got the Heritage Series. So the Heritage Series of bikes is basically, I've got bike number 1, my RS660. We've got pictures of it and stuff like that. If you go and have a quick look on the website, it's all there. Or if you just put AP Workshop's Heritage Series, you'll see pictures of the bikes that we build. But they are modern bikes with a classic twist. So effectively what we've got is new bikes with like classic sort of liveries and tuned parts and that kind of stuff. So I've got the RS660, which is my Chesterfield RS660, which is my bike. I love that. I've got an RS250, which I built in 2009. I rode it once in 2010. I sold it to a guy who took it to Canada. So that disappeared, and 14 years later, that turned up on Facebook Marketplace back in the UK. So I had to kind of walk back to the guy, cap in hand. In fact, my mate Dom, it was Dom. He basically he rang us up and said, "Your bike's on Facebook Marketplace. Is it your bike? I can't tell you." So he called us and said, "Your bike's on Marketplace." And I sort of messaged the guy. I was like, "Give me my bike! Give me my bike!" So I basically got my RS250 back that had been away out of the country for 14 years, and it came back, and I found it. So I had to kind of, how much is it going to take? He basically doubled his money on me, but I had to sell it in 2010 to pay the wages. That was it. So I've got that 250. I've got 457 that we've got, which is amazing. Again, the shop RS 457, the A2 compliant 457. That's really cool. I've got a couple of Harleys that I ride every now and again. I know people hate the Harleys. I don't care. Get over it. Every time you see them on the films, get over it. It's a bike, man. We all ride, and that's what the most important thing. And I've still got, I've still got my 350 LC that I bought when I was 19 years old. I've still got it. In fact, me and Rich fixed it last year and got it up and running again because it had been standing for about 20 years or something, because I'm a bad dad, I am. I'm sorry. But yeah, the whole engine was seized, locked up solid. It was just a real mess, and I'm pretty embarrassed actually, because it probably was the worst engine I've ever dealt with, and it was my own engine. But I've still got that 350 LC that I've got now, and I've got a couple of my old race bikes and stuff like that that floating about, that kind of thing. But I think the 350 LC, a couple of my Harleys and that kind of stuff, I really dig them.
Nice. Have you got a dream bike that you haven't owned yet?
Yes, I have, and I can't afford it. And it's the most beautiful bike in the world, and it's not even an Aprilia, which is the weird thing about it. But yeah, there's one bike I've never owned, which I'd like to own one day, and it is, I don't know if I'd be sort of, you know, when you kind of shouldn't meet your heroes, that kind of thing. Maybe that's the case, I don't know, but if you have a look up, or if you go on Google, it's a Motul Guzzi. If you have a look at a Motul Guzzi MGS01, it is the most beautiful bike I've ever seen in the world. I actually worked the NEC bike show in the UK. I actually worked the NEC bike show in the UK in 2004. And on the stand, I did the whole 14 days, because it was a 14-day thing then. And I did it on crutches because I'd crashed or something. But I did it on crutches. And all of those 14 days that when we were there was the MGS01, which is this Motul Guzzi's beautiful bike. And I spent the entire 14 days working there and basically kind of dealing with people and talking to people and that kind of stuff, which was fantastic. But I spent the entire 14 days sort of every now and again this bike could catch your eye, but I just probably never will own one because they're just so rare. But yeah, the MGS01, man, I've never owned one, and maybe one day I might. I don't know if I'd even ride it if I got one, though. That's the problem. That's the tragic thing. But yeah, that was a good thing, and kind of maybe one day. In fact, if anybody's got one out there, I'm interested, but I can't afford 40 grand, that's for sure.
What do bikes mean to you?
It's everything. It's my living. It's my world. It's like I said. I've said it. I'm sure I've said it a million times during this interview. It's the first thing I think about when I get up in the morning. It's the last thing I think about when I go to bed at night. I walk into work and I'm the most blessed individual in the world. I get to fix motorcycles for a living. How bad's that? That's amazing, isn't it? For me, I don't want to do anything else. So, like I said, from the first time I saw my dad's bike and I was fixing lawnmowers and stuff like that, it's all I've ever wanted to do. I still talk to people, even like grown-ass people, and say, what, you know, and they ask you, what do you want to do for a living when you grow up? And I kind of like, I've always known what I want to do. Since I was a boy, I've always known what I wanted to do. I remember going to careers lessons, and that was a horrendous affair because I was just never any good at school. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm a bike guy, man. I want to fix bikes. And fortunately, I got the opportunity. How? I don't know. It still blows my mind how I got that opportunity, but it's all I've ever done and it's all I want to do ever. That's it. So bikes, that's what it is. That's what it is. Some people are interested in fishing. Some people are interested in, you know, like kind of other things, dancing, music, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I get it, but it's bikes, isn't it? That's what it's about. It's a thing. It's a way of life. I don't know if that makes sense to people. I don't know, but bikes are a way of life. That's what it is. So done. I'm stuck. I'm happy to be stuck with it too, as it goes.